everybody. Hope everybody's having a great start to the day. It is beautiful and sunny outside here in Sydney today. Let me just get our books. And I'm looking forward to seeing what today's chapter is going to bring us. So, what else was I going to say? Yesterday, I had an amazing group of cash flow players, and we had some really great times and some great learnings as well with regards to finance, which is always good. And after that, I spoke to a friend of mine, and this friend of mine, he is very funny. We haven't spoken in years, and it was very interesting to catch up with him. I thought he'd actually died, but thankfully he hadn't died. He was just hiding away from the world for a bit. Anyhow, so we are going to be reading, and there's a couple of people that have been sending hearts and all sorts of beautiful things. So Crayon, thank you for that. And let's have a look. There's also Hon. Aha, if you are Japanese, and otherwise Ben if you are Chinese. Okay, and pleased to meet you as well. Let's have a look. Global Esthetician. Nice to meet you as well. So we're going to be doing some reading. I have Rich Dad Poor Dad in Chinese, which is a book that I originally wanted to read. I used to do it listening, and if I touch the phone or anything, everything starts shaking, so I need to avoid that. So I only have the Chinese version of that. I don't think any of you probably, or maybe some of you, but most of you are not going to be able to learn or know Chinese. So we're reading this book, The Art of Thinking Clearly. It is a great book. I know a couple of you have been watching me a couple of times, so it is good seeing some of you here. Today we're going to be talking chapter 35. Curb your enthusiasm, the winner's curse. So let's get into it. This is going to be another good chapter, I'm sure. All of these are really good. And then I'll give my commentary. The ones at the beginning I don't always agree with, but the ones towards the end are really, really good. Okay. And Believer, hi, and nice to meet you as well. Let me quickly do that. And yes, if you're joining on Zoom or Bigo, we've got all sorts of different things going on here. It is great seeing you. Let's get into the winner's curse. Texas in the 1950s. A piece of land is being auctioned. 10 oil companies are vying for it. Each has made an estimate of how much the site is worth. The lowest assessment is 10 million and the highest is 100 million. The higher the price climbs during the auction, the more firms exit the bidding. Finally, one company submits the highest bid and wins. Champagne corks pop. Yay! The winner's curse suggests that the winner of an auction often turns out to be the loser, especially in auctions. Whoever came up with the idea of auctions was a genius. Industry analysts have noted that companies that regularly emerge as winning bidders from these oil-field auctions systematically paid too much and years later went under. And it's so similar with, like, there were a couple of mergers and acquisitions with regards to banks in, what was it? I think like 2004, 2005. And then everything went south and it just turned into a big mess for the companies that like overpaid on mergers and acquisitions. This is understandable. If the estimates vary between 10 million and 100 million, the actual value most likely lies somewhere in the middle. The highest bid in an auction is often much too high, unless these bidders have critical information that others are not privy to. This was not the case in Texas. The oil managers actually celebrated a Pyrrhic victory, Pyrrhic. I have to write that one down. I do not know that word. Today, this phenomenon affects us all. From eBay to Groupon to Google AdWords, prices are consistently set by auction. As I said, whoever came up with the idea for auctions was an absolute genius. Bidding wars for cell phone frequencies drive telecom companies to the brink of bankruptcy. Airports rent out their commercial spaces to the highest bidder. Airports are notorious. Here in Sydney, we have an airport where I think you pay like 8 times as much for coffee because they're being charged so much rent for a cafe at the airport that, yeah, the prices for normal everyday items are like astronomical. And if Walmart plans to introduce a new detergent and ask for tenders from 5 suppliers, that's nothing more than an auction with the risk of the winner's curse. Only in this case, they're going to be putting their prices further and further down rather than up. The auctioning of everyday life has now reached tradesmen too, thanks to the internet. When my walls needed a new lick of paint, instead of tracking down The handiest painter, I advertised the job online. 30 painters, some from more than 300 miles away, competed for the job. The best offer was so low that out of compassion, I could not accept it. To spare the poor painter the winner's curse. I see it often as well. People are willing to underbid each other just to be able to get the business, because practically everything is based off an auction nowadays when it's like open source kind of online things. Initial public offerings, IPOs, are also examples of auctions. And when companies buy other companies, the infamous mergers and acquisitions that I spoke about before as well, the winner's curse is present more often than not. Astoundingly, more than half of all acquisitions destroy value, according to a McKinsey study. So why do we fall victim to the winner's curse? Firstly, the real value of many things is uncertain. Yes, keep that in mind. Unless you have like information about things, unless you know exactly how to value them. And if you have a look at house prices, if you get your house valued or an investment property valued, the valuation on that is going to be murky. You could ask 3 different valuers, they'll give you a different valuation. You could ask and they'll all give you the same valuation. There's all these different ways of looking at it. So you need to keep that in mind. And that's really important. So it's like a really gray area in that sense. Let me quickly just push a button here. There we go. Okay. Second, additionally, the more interested parties, the greater the likelihood of an overly enthusiastic bid. Have you ever seen those auctions where they go and want to buy a painting, like one of these really, really famous paintings, and they set record prices all the time because they just keep over and over and over bidding. Now, with those paintings, obviously, if they're overbidding, they could then auction it off in a couple of years' time and people would go crazy for it again. So, yeah. Second, we want to outdo competition. A friend owned a micro antenna factory and told me about the cutthroat bidding war that Apple instigated during the development of the iPhone. Everybody wants to be the official supplier to Apple, even though whoever gets the contract is likely to lose money. So how much would you pay for $100? Imagine that you and an opponent are invited to take part in an auction. The rules: whoever makes the highest offer gets the $100 bill. And most importantly, when this happens, both bidders have to pay their final offer. How high will you go? From your perspective, it makes sense to pay $20, $30, or $40. Your opponent does the same. Even $99 seems like a reasonable offer for a $100 bill. Now, your competitor offers $100. If this remains the highest bid, he will come away breaking even paying $100 for $100. Whereas you will simply have to cough up $99. So you continue to bid. At $110, you have a guaranteed loss of $10. But your opponent would have to shell out $109, his last bid. So he will continue playing. When do you stop? When will your competitor give up? Try it out with friends. It's actually quite interesting, isn't it? Unless it's like a rare $100 bill that's actually worth like $500 or something. So keep an eye out for auctions around you. And thank you for all the little hearts that I'm getting on Bigo. I can see quite a few of them. So thumbs up, thank you for that. So in conclusion, accept this piece of wisdom about auctions from Warren Buffett. Don't go. Now, that's a really simple one. If you happen to work in an industry where they are inevitable, set a maximum price and deduct 20% from this offer to offset the winner's curse. So whatever you think the value is going to be, reduce it by 20% and then set that as your maximum and avoid them if you can. Especially if you're like one of the contractors lowering your price in order to be able to get the job. Write this number on a piece of paper and don't go a cent over it. So this is really, really important. So especially now with how online gigs work and how all of these different things that are going on around us, eBays and all of those different kinds of things, I'm sure you know plenty of auction sites and ways in which everything's being turned into a competition. Keep that in mind, that very often we will go a little bit crazy. And the people that invented auctions, I've said it probably about 3 times already, they were geniuses because they understood the principle that people are going to overpay when they join an auction, especially if there are 2 people left at the end and they're like, I have to have it, have to have it. We lose our head with auctions. So make sure that you keep that in mind. And if you can train yourself to be really disciplined and say, this is my cutoff point, this is the final price that I'm willing to accept, and you do not pass it, you will come out the winner. If you consistently go past whatever it is that you say your top amount is, very often what will happen is that you are going to end up overbidding and getting something that's worth 100 for 120. And like Rolf says in the book, try it out with your friends and auction off $100 bill and see whether you can get people to overbid on the 100. And it seems really silly, and people will probably say, no, I'm not going to pay more than $100 for a $100 bill. But when it comes to assets that you can't quantify as easily as a $100 bill, because a $100 bill, it says on the bill how much it's worth. You know exactly what it's worth. But with a company, with other things, with products online, especially if they've also like put a recommended retail price next to it to anchor that price, which is in another chapter in the book, then it becomes really difficult to quantify the actual value of it. And it's easy to overbid. And especially if you are a business that is doing a merger or acquisition or anything similar to that, there is a real big danger that you're going to overpay by so much that you are going to bankrupt yourself. Even for the prestige, like the example of the iPhone, for all of the people that wanted to be the exclusive and wanted to be one of the first people that were supplying parts for the iPhone. That's wonderful, and it's really good name recognition. But if you are paying too much and charging too little for being that exclusive first-time iPhone supplier, then it can absolutely ruin your business. And a lot of the first suppliers to a company like this have ruined themselves because Walmart and Apple and different really big companies have a lot of extremely powerful bargaining power to really get you to reduce your prices. So that was the Winner's Curse, chapter 35. I can tell from the hearts, there was a lot of hearts being sent. So I can tell that resonated with a lot of people. And tomorrow, chapter 36, never ask a writer if the novel is autobiographical. This one's called The Fundamental Attribution Error. And if I remember, it was quite interesting, this chapter. So you'll have to find out tomorrow what that one's about. I'm looking forward to reading that one to you tomorrow. Thank you for joining. And yeah, keep an eye out for the winner's curse today. Don't get sucked in by that one. Have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all tomorrow.